What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. You're listening to In Camp Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Hepler. Today, I have a pretty cool guest because he was an early mentor of mine. I can call him that. He wasn't one of my earliest mentors. I had been hunting for a long time before I met Tom Ham. And one day I go into a bow shop and Tom kind of just relights the fire for a lot of stuff as far as archery goes for me and gave me a lot of encouragement. And I remember after he helped me set up my first bow, I shot my first bow buck after about 18 years of bow hunting. So check out this episode. It's not all on bow hunting. We talk about getting kids into archery, how Tom has brought archery into schools. It's really cool. Tom's very involved in conservation efforts, involved in conservation groups, and really making a difference. And then we get into his other passions because it's something that I don't get to talk to Tom about very often. And I haven't talked about it on this podcast yet. And I know my dad is going to love it. We're talking fly fishing. And Tom is a stellar fly fisherman, especially when it comes to Pennsylvania waters. He really has a passion for that. And he really just has a love for being outside and doing some really cool stuff. So you're going to get to hear his thoughts on being outside, his thoughts on seasons of life and all that kind of stuff that ties into all the things that he really loves to do. So check this one out. You're going to love it. If you would, I'm going to ask you to leave me a rating and a review. I really need them, and I really appreciate when you leave them. I kind of feel stupid for asking because it's kind of weird to me. I don't know. It's kind of weird. But if you would, I would so much appreciate it. And, if you do one of those things, please reach out and let's chat. It's always fun to catch up with the guests or with visitors and listeners to the show. So I hope you do that. And I hope I get to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening week after week. This is In Camp Podcast. Tom is ultimately responsible for firing me up more about archery because I remember coming into your shop maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I was buying a new bow. And I don't remember even what I had at the time, but you're like, oh, this is, if you're going to be a whitetail hunter, you're PA. And it's not that I wasn't into archery hunting before, but I remember you kind of like lit my fire about it. And that was the year I bought a new bow. You helped me set it up, and I went out to public and I shot my first buck with a bow. Not my first buck, but my first bow buck with that bow on public. And it was my first public land deer. So I owe you a lot of thanks for that. But shortly after that, I know Tom hasn't even said a word yet, so I'm going to apologize for this, but this is just my thanks to our guest. Shortly after that, Tom is he's a writer. He's well versed. We were just talking about how he loves to he can't say no, so he's got to join boards and be part of organizations and stuff. But Tom loved to write. That's one of his outlets. So you're going to learn that about him in this episode. But Tom is also ultimately responsible for telling me, hey, you should put some words on paper. So I did a lot of writing, and Tom is ultimately responsible for helping me get started in that. So thank you, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've really taken every opportunity you've had to kind of act on that and do some good things with your passions and stuff like that. And I actually do remember how we first met and when you came into the shop and we were talking about hunting and you getting an archery and helping me out with all that. You bought the Bowtech.
Yeah.
Was that Carbon Icon, I think it was?
It was, yeah. I don't even have that. I sold that bow to another guy that wanted to get kind of started in archery. So
yeah, it was cool because you were one of those guys that would show up on a quasi regular basis. Then a couple new questions, picking up a couple new little bbits of equipment. We were talking broadheads, but the best part to me was, I don't know, sometime in October, November, I forget when it was, but you came into the shop and you put that rack on the table and you were like, I did it. You told me the story. That's what made that job really cool, is stories like that. So
yeah, I always remember the picture board that you had going in there. It was always fun because you had everybody that had like caught the big trout for the year or shot some big bucks, and it was cool because you get to talk to some of the other guys that would come to the shop and, while you were working, I'd chat with some of the other people that would come in and stuff too.
Yeah.
But man, that was kind of a cool phase of, of my my hunting and fishing. I don't want to say career because it's not a career, but but you know what I'm talking about. Like
Right.
it's cool to get to share that stuff with people that just have that mutual fun. And it was like a small town kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun catching up with you all the time there. But
Well, I mean,
you know,
working there definitely accelerated my interest in everything that I was able to accomplish,
yeah,
with it. When you're in that environment and you have that kind of exposure to people and you're kind of in the industry and you see all this stuff, it definitely puts you on the fast track. I think as long as you had the passion in the first place, it was a pretty fun place to be, while it lasted.
yeah, yeah. Uh, and we always end up talk everybody that shares the mutual thing too is we always end up talking about the Great American Outdoor Show because it's like you're all pumped about it to start. And then you get
Uh-huh.
to like Wednesday and
Yep.
realize you got 5 days left. You're like, oh,
It is a
jeez.
grind, man. It's a grind. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Everyone looks at if you're a customer, you look at it like through rose-colored glasses. But if you're working it or you're helping, if you're a rep or you're anything involved with the actual work behind it, it is a slog to get through. And I think people don't realize that. And I feel bad because the people that maybe wait till that second weekend to come looking for all the deals, the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and they just walk in and they see you and you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
like
And they want to
get
tell you
this over with.
their deer hunting story. And you're
Yep.
like,
Yeah. Oh, you shot a deer.
cool.
Good.
Yeah. It's funny too, because like I haven't, Exodus went out of business. So I haven't, ran a booth for a couple of years now, but everybody remembers when I did. So you kind of like still have they're like, dude, all I'm trying to do this week is make sure that I don't catch the plague.
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
like,
One of us would always catch something. I mean,
oh
somebody
yeah,
was getting sick. I mean, you
yeah,
can't be around that many people in a confined space shaking that many hands without catching something, you know?
no, no.
So
But it is when you get to that Sunday, and usually it's Super Bowl Sunday. You're like, I've, what time is it?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. That
but
was sometimes the saving grace. The crowds filed out a little earlier, and it was kind of just you could start cleaning up and loading up the trailer a while, and
but
yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So, Tom, what I mentioned in the beginning is your involvement in all kinds of things. You were just telling me that you signed up for the board um, for your son's lacrosse team, and I think that's funny because not only are you involved in your own family's life, you've really gotten to put your stamp in a lot of good places. If I remember right, you run and or started or really ramped up the Reading Archery Club. Is that right?
Lebanon Valley Sportsmen's Association. So
Lebanon Valley.
the SA out in Warnersville, yeah.
Yeah, and you've helped to start some of the archery programs in schools for a couple of different places. You've been part of Trout Unlimited and all these different sportsmen's clubs committees. It's really cool. What really fires your passion, and what do you think the need is to be involved in things like that, where it's not just send your $35 in this year kind of deal?
Well, you nailed it right there. At some point, I realized that what particularly with sportsmen's clubs and an organization like Trout Unlimited is more than the more than the dollars, especially like a national organization, the local chapter is only going to see a certain percentage of that. So
Yeah,
you kind of, if you really open your eyes to what's going on, you realize the dues don't really do a whole lot for what you
yeah,
might consider like your local fishing hole. What organizations like that need, what your sportsman's club really need is people who wanna get involved and help out. My sportsman's club, we have, at any point in the year, we could look and say, "Oh, we have 800 members." But when you really look around, it's usually the same 40 people, maybe not even, that are actually showing up to do work detail, getting involved in the committees and things like that. And I guess the one thing that I don't know how I pieced it together early on, what drives me to wanna help isn't something I can explain. But I realized, like, you have to kinda give back to something that you're passionate about. If you want the fishing to be good, then help out with a conservation organization. If you
Mhm.
want a place to go and recreate with your shooting sports and things like that, then actually help out at your sportsman's club.
Yeah.
If you want your children to have a quality experience in their passionate sport they're passionate about while they're going through school, roll up your sleeves, offer to help coach or jump on the board and organize a tournament. Like, I just kind of feel like if you really care about something, if something gives pleasure to you, then you have to kind of give back to it and really
Yeah.
kind of feed it. That's what makes it work. And I don't know when I had that epiphany, but I had that epiphany, and then for as many years as I can remember now, as an adult life, I just was getting involved in things.
Yeah.
So, with the sportsman's club too, I remember having a conversation. It was actually with my daughter. She's 15 now, but at this time, I think she was like 6, and she was at one of our 3D shoots, and she just kinda had this little bow, and we're
Mhm.
driving home, and we had to clean it all up, and it wasn't a good shoot because it was raining and people didn't show up, and she's like and I was kinda frustrated, and she's like, "Well, Dad, why do you go through all that? Why do you just do all that if it gets you mad sometimes?" And I said, "Well," I said, "You know, all the things that make outdoor pursuits great, the things that I like to do, like bow hunting and fishing, like they need organizations behind this that make it work. They make money by people buying fishing and hunting licenses and buying, the equipment to do it. If we can
Yeah.
make people passionate about that and give them a way to do it, then that will just kind of feed the whole process and eventually it gets better for everyone. So putting a shoot together at a club is actually an act of conservation, and conservation is really what the
Mhm.
wildlife needs, you
Right.
know? So
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
someone who likes deer, then get involved in a sportsman's club. Like we're the ones that are really feeding the coffers to do the right thing for the wildlife. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great perspective, and it's cool to see kids like, how kids think about stuff like that, you know?
yeah, yeah.
You've been pretty involved with, like, getting kids involved and, like I said, you did the programs in the schools. How do you think that the mentorship that you've kind of fostered, how do you think that that has an impact on the culture as far as conservation and stuff like that?
I hope it has a positive impact. Starting the archery clubs in the 2 middle schools that I did was actually one part of a greater realization that I had working in the sportsman shop in the archery shop. As you can well
Mhm.
imagine, most of our clientele were men of a certain age.
Yeah. Right.
And if you really wanted to, a certain background, whatever, but you realize, like, women and children were not exactly the ones walking through the door, and their avenue into the sport of archery was maybe through a mentor in their life if they were lucky to have one. So, I think what I recognized was archery could be an activity, a sport, a discipline for kids who aren't doing the normal sports, right? Like, if you think about football, speed, agility, strength, all that matters. In
Yeah.
archery, you just need discipline and a repeatable process, you know? So
Right.
I thought that the sport itself, the activity itself was just a great way to get kids involved in something if they were kinda turned off or not turned on by the typical sports.
Mhm.
And I think by reaching out to that group of kids, I hope because the clubs are still going, even though I could not be involved the last few years because of a job change and, shift change and all that. Um,
Mhm.
my friends at Lebanon Valley have kinda taken it and ran with it, and they've gotten involved just the same as I was, and they kept it going, and then we see these kids come back to our youth program in the summer at the club, and just the parents that tell us the stories of how much it's meant to them to be able to
Yeah.
have this activity. So to answer your question, I know I'm roundabout way here. I
That's
hope
perfect.
that it has actually helped put shooting disciplines, shooting sports in a slightly less stereotypical way. I know that sometimes people look at those a certain way, and I just hope that introducing these kids to it has shown them and their families that it's actually a pretty fun activity. And last summer we actually did a ladies' night at the club, and I know that
Oh,
some of the
cool.
moms of the kids that were in the clubs and in our program actually showed up. So I think it's helping the reputation overall because we're getting a little more attention, and people that you might not think coming into it or showing interest are showing up to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's really cool. I think it's kinda like I mean, it's a pretty the state has a pretty easy way to, like, access the information and get the grants and that kind of thing for the program, but you still have to put a lot of legwork into doing that. What was something that what was something that really helped you get those programs started?
So it all starts with an email to the principal,
Mhm.
some high level administrator or the principal, just whoever can actually make the call
Yeah.
to allow this to come into the building. Um, Once you got the okay from there, there was obviously some financial uh, things to deal with. Now, some schools can, at the time, could more easily absorb the cost of everything that was needed, and then sometimes, the other school that I was involved with really had to do some fundraising, or we had to help
Yeah.
them find a way. Um, so you get the permission to do it. Then you gotta get your hands on the actual equipment. Now, the National Archery in the Schools program, which a lot of us use to do that, you've gotta get there's, like, that curtain that they shoot into, all the
Yeah.
bows, all the arrows, that's your main equipment, but aside from that, you also need a safe space to do it,
Mhm.
and you have to have a member of the staff who's willing to be there and be a part of it, and
Mhm.
the volunteers that are doing it also have to get their clearances to be able to be in the school and have
Right.
close physical contact with students so they can teach them to do this. So, um, those are all the things, those are all the ducks you got to have in a row before you can even show up.
Yeah.
And so I did two middle schools at a time, and
Mhm.
we were doing the one was like right after school, and then the other one was like I think first thing in the morning. And
Mm.
that's when you just got to call your buddies. It's like, look, I'm the local archery guy. I'm at the shop. I'm the one that's kind of spearheading this, but I can't do it alone. So then you get a few
Yeah.
buddies that have a flexible schedule, and then they show up with you. But I think the biggest thing is obviously the first few things I mentioned, and also having a member of the staff willing to be a part of it who also embraces it. Because it's not just a normal gym class thing. This was totally an extra thing. So we also needed space to store everything as well.
Right.
Um, and you can't just have a bunch of bows hanging in a hallway because you know what's gonna happen. The kids are just gonna terrorize them, so they had to be behind lock and
Yeah.
key, and so then they had to
Yeah.
trust you with the key to get the stuff out, and there's a lot that goes into it when you're doing it as an additional club at the school.
Right.
But I think really just kinda selling it like I sold it to you before, this is the sport for everyone else,
Yeah.
and this could really be good for a lot of kids, and we did find that kids that struggled for any reason. Actually, a paper I wrote in college once was how fly fishing actually could help an autistic child because of, step one, step two, step three result
Mm.
and kind of get them. Well, archery is the same way. So through that club,
Mhm.
we also realized that there were some children there that had some learning disabilities that really blossomed by having that rigid structure to get the
Yeah.
end result. Um,
Yeah.
So, I think they acknowledged that that was a potential early on as well, so that helped us kinda grease the axle to get it in there.
That's so cool, dude. I
Yep,
think it's such a unique way to like because it isn't something like you said, it's not a sport that needs like the agility or, they don't need to pump weights in the gym or do any of that to really be able to do it. And it's a really cool way to kind of, something that you said earlier is we're having these guys out to do a shoot. And in some way, this impacts conservation. And it's almost the same thing in the school, right? Like
absolutely.
these kids are shooting a bow, and to them, it's not related to hunting right now, but it kind of like, it might spark that interest in striking a conversation out about conservation, or even
Yep.
if they never get into hunting, maybe they're into the biology work or into habitat management or something that can impact it in some way, shape, or form.
Anything that
And
exposes yeah,
yeah, and it is a really good avenue into, uh, college scholarships, or that not a lot of people are shooting bows for college. You know what I mean?
right.
It's not something that it's like one of those things where it's like, man, if I could go back, I would either bass fish or or shoot a bow in college, That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, we did have to be a little careful, like, we made sure to really especially in the beginning, just kinda, like, these are Vegas-based targets. Like, we're not
Yeah.
gonna present the animal option as a learning
Right.
path.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
inevitably, like, we did wanna make things fun for them, so we did get permission to show up with a few 3D targets, And it actually led to some conversation about the ethics of hunting and why it was important to put your arrow in that scoring ring where the scoring ring was, because, we do want to minimize the no unfortunate part where that animal's going to suffer briefly.
Yeah.
We are to minimize that with our expert, awesome archery skills to put that arrow exactly where we want it. We spent all semester learning how to do it. Now we can do it. So
Yeah.
we gradually kind of got into that, but it led to some really cool conversations. And to your point, it obviously brought the topic of hunting up, and we could talk about it as a positive thing for the wildlife. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's really cool. And definitely keeping it fun for kids is, now there's all kinds of different you can get aliens and Sasquatch and T-Rex, I'm sure there's a lot of cool ways to
I'll
keep them
tell you what the
involved.
funnest thing to do was we actually got like poster board and we drew like big tic tac toe on
Oh,
on
yeah, that's a
on
cool
card.
idea.
So if you had a red arrow, you were like the X's, and if you had the orange yellow arrow, you were the O's, and it was like whoever could make
Yeah.
the line first. Oh, they love
Yeah,
that. I even got
I'm
in on that.
sure. I'm sure you did. Uh, I remember you being such a tinker in the bow shop. You're like, "Oh, trying these new arrows, and,
Yep.
I'm just putting these little finishes on them." And
Mhm.
so I'm sure tic-tac-toe was right up your alley.
Oh my god, yeah.
What do you think for little clubs and stuff like that, what do you think helps people, stay engaged in the long term?
For, like, the after school clubs?
Or, just in general?
Yeah. Um, I think it's really all about the nature of your exposure. So what type of
Mm,
mentor did you have?
yeah,
How did that person you know, I'm just gonna say it, like, sometimes there's some dads out there that maybe shouldn't be the guy that actually gets their kid hunting. I
mhm,
mean, I know plenty of stories of people who really felt bad for a kid at camp if the kid made a mistake, and the dad didn't handle it that well. So I
mm,
think if you really wanna keep people in this long term, my head just immediately, because I have 2 kids, went to a mentor. Like, who's your mentor? How are they encouraging? Are they willing to tell you what they don't know? And
mhm,
then therefore open the door for you to kinda create your own path. I still am in a position today at my club where people come to me and they ask for help, and we'll get to a
yeah,
point where we're messing with a bow or I'm talking about a certain arrow bill or something like that, and I'll just get to a point where it's like, honestly, we're in uncharted territory for me right now.
yeah,
So let's learn together, or we could just stop and be happy with the result that we have right now and then take our time and learn. And maybe that's something you focus on for next season. Let's not rush it for this hunting season, whatever, or this 3D season. Um,
yeah,
but I think it really comes back to, people having a positive influence in their life where hunting and shooting is concerned, and fishing, just anyone who can just make it fun. Um, that's ultimately important because I think we do need to feed from the bottom. I know you can be a mentor to an adult, but mostly we're being a mentor to someone younger than ourselves, and you really
yeah,
gotta put the kid gloves on sometimes, and there were plenty of times before my son went to the woods with a rifle that he went with maybe his tablet or a video game, and if he wanted to if after 30 minutes it was time to focus on something else, I let them do it. I said, "Just use your headphones." Like
yeah,
or unfortunately, if they just wanna go, if they're cold, don't make them miserable. Like, don't give them
yeah,
hypothermia because you think a deer is gonna show up in the next 10 minutes. No, just if they're done, they're done. Don't make it a bad thing, always just make it a positive thing.
yeah. There's kinda like from that perspective, I've taken my daughter a couple times, and this year she actually wanted to be the hunter and go turkey hunting.
Mhm.
And usually she can make it like an hour. And
Yeah.
then she's like, "When are we gonna go?" And I'm like, so since she was the hunter this year, I said, "You know what? Like, is there a reason you want to leave?" Uh, and she couldn't think of one. And I'm like, then let's just stay. Like give it another 45 minutes. We'll
Mhm.
do 45 minutes just to kind of stretch the patience a little bit. You know what I
Right.
mean? And then I actually had a conversation about why it's important to be patient and kind of like not just hunting. Like it's
Yeah.
important to be patient and wait for things that you really want. And I said, you'd want to shoot a turkey, right? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, the turkey isn't always going to come by right away. So
Right.
sometimes you have to do a little bit of hard things and just so it's not like a we're staying kind of thing, but kind of just that draw it out a little bit. And I stuck to it. Like, we're gonna stay 45 more minutes. Okay. And we stay 45 minutes. And I'm like, all right, it's time to go. And then the next time I went, she made it like 3 hours before she
Oh,
asked, when are we leaving? You know?
you
And
know.
and then it was kind of like, now, like, cause I was ready too. Like, turkeys are done gobbling, And, but it was funny because on that opening morning, there was a bird gobbling when we got there. And, this was for that youth season a couple weeks ago. And, there's bird gobbling. We get in the blind. It gets light. I call the bird in like 5 minutes, and neither of us see it coming because it's coming from like, I had a window like half closed on this side to keep the blind dark, and
Mhm.
I didn't catch it coming through the thing. And she was kind of like, you know, reaching around a little bit. I'm like, all right, we'll get you some snacks. And I'm like reaching in the pack to get a snack. And I literally looked down for a split second. Like, I just put my hand in the pack and I look up, and the turkey's right in front of blind, like 5 yards. I'm like, oh no. And, you get out, she's like, Dad, what do I do? And, you get all right, get on him. All right. She's like, did you take the safety off? Yep, I took the safety off. Yeah. When you're ready, you pull that trigger. Boom. And the turkey does, he just like runs out to 20 yards. And dude, we were laughing. So I was like, oh, she didn't get it. I didn't really care because it
Yeah.
actually got her pretty excited about it then. Like, she had
Right.
some skin in the game, like, oh, I actually learned how to shoot this gun. I know I missed that turkey, but now I really want that turkey. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
it's kind of,
Yep. And
it's kind of,
it's great. It's great to see your kids in that environment, to see how they react. Like, this
yeah,
past
yeah.
rifle season was like the first opportunity, the best opportunity my son had to shoot one.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, a a doe came walking in, and just every time he was comfortable with where the crosshairs were, it took a step. And it
Mm,
just repeated itself, and he could never just get 100% comfortable with it to actually execute the shot. And, then eventually walked out of our lives, but that was a conversation we got to have. I said, "Now you understand this isn't shooting off the bench at the club. Like,
uh-huh.
you're a dynamo at the range, but now you realize in the woods with all these other factors, it's different. So you don't have that next experience until you have this experience, you know?"
Yeah,
And, I said, "Now the next time you see a deer, you're gonna be just slightly less nervous, but you're gonna understand what happens when you look through the scope. You're gonna know that maybe I gotta just be just you're more comfortable now. You're more familiar with the situation, so next time it should go better." And I think that made him feel pretty good.
yeah,
Um, he asked me, he's like, "Could you have shot that deer?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "But don't get disappointed. I'm like 30 plus years older than you, man. Like,
yeah,
I I've learned a
yeah,
few tricks and I'm just a little more comfortable." I said, "You're gonna get there." I said, "The first time I had that experience, it was probably not much unlike what you experienced today."
yeah,
So, even in the losses, there's wins.
yeah. It's
Yep.
funny how they want to know from your experience
Mhm.
what happened, because my daughter did the same thing. She's like, well, I'm sure you missed turkeys like that when you were my age, right? And I was like, I didn't even see a turkey till I
Yeah.
was like 14. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's turkeys in PA are not that easy to come by.
Right.
But you had mentioned about like maybe somebody's dad isn't the best person to teach them because of maybe some mistakes that person might make. But what are some of the things that, not necessarily like getting angry at the kid or whatever, but maybe there's things that you forget to have a conversation about that are the mistake. Like, what you did right is a good conversation to have,
Mhm.
and maybe missing that conversation is a mistake because that if you have that conversation about what they did right, it could be something that keeps them doing that, adding on to that piece of right. What are some of the things that you think are mistakes that are overlooked by mentors, like if they forgot to talk about something?
This is my son just went through his hunter safety course, so he's no longer
Mm.
now he's like a junior. So I got all this stuff in my brain.
Yeah.
Um, I think a conversation that I always have with my son that someone said to me when I told them that I told him that, they said, "I wish that's something that would be said aloud more by someone's dad, uncle, or grandfather.
Mhm.
And I told him it's the shot. Sometimes the best shot is the one you never take. If the
Mhm.
shot's not there, you don't take the shot.
Mhm.
So I guess from that, I would say just really make it more about the experience, not the result, because the
Mhm.
deer aren't playing by our script. The turkey don't play
Mhm.
by our script. The fish don't play by our script. So I
Mhm.
think the conversation that's missed is enjoy the activity. When I worked at the shop, people would they want to get into hunting. They say, "What's the most important thing I need to know about hunting?" I said, "The most important thing is you just need to like being outdoors.
Yeah.
If you like being outdoors, hunting gives you the opportunity to plug in and engage with the process of wild things more than just being an observer. But you have to like being out there. If you think this is like a TV show where you just go out and deer show up to the food plot and you're going to drop one where it stands within the first 5 minutes of daylight, that no, like, go out because
Yeah.
you like being outside, because you like being on the water, and
Yeah.
sometimes you have to let them walk,
Yep.
so you don't end
Yep.
up regretting anything. We wanna minimize that regret. So
Yeah.
I think that just hearing some peripheral conversation around the club and things like that, it's like, it's all about a lot of people wanna focus on how to be successful. I think we just need
Mhm.
to focus on how to enjoy it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you can
Absolutely.
you can you can tinker a bow 8 ways from Sunday. It doesn't mean the deer is gonna show up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't worry so much about success, just worry about enjoying it, and win, lose, or draw, I don't ever sit there come February 1st when all the hunting seasons are wrapped up except squirrel. I don't ever sit there and be like, "Ah, I wish I'd have gotten more deer." Sometimes I'm like, "Yeah, that was a grind, but I'm glad to have been out." Like, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
You can go pheasant hunting with me next year in
I
February.
know, I know. We almost lined that up.
We did.
Yep.
We did. Uh, I mean, for you, you what has made you stick with archery and fishing basically for life? Like you're a lifer. You're in it for the long haul now. What was something for you that has made it just absolutely stick?
Fishing's an easy answer. My dad was in the service, so I was actually born overseas, and
Mhm.
when we got home, I was still a youngster. Um, Fishing was just always this thing that we did.
Mm.
So even after we came home from Germany, like, we lived in a few different places until he got
Mhm.
out of the service and got a normal job, normal life. But no matter what, like, we were always fishing. Like, that was the one constant, and reading. I'm a big reader too, so there was always, like, books and fishing, and eventually a
Mhm.
four-wheeler showed up in there too, but, um so fishing is just it seems to be, I don't know, it's like my earliest thing that I identified with that makes Tom Ham who he is when he's got a
Yeah.
fishing pole in his hand.
Yeah.
Um, Archery was something that I dabbled with as a kid, um, and always wanted to find my way back to it, but really it took me a while to do so. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just, I guess the way I choose to fish and shoot a bow, I think it's more of a challenge. And I think
Mhm.
you earn it a little more when the results that you want do come. It's like, because I'm a big fly fisherman, like, that's
Yeah.
t and then lately, like, my biggest goal was traditional archery. I've been shooting the recurve bow forever, and that's something that I get really hot with, but I never actually closed the deal on a deer yet. But it's like, I am
Mhm.
so compelled to make that happen because I feel like in some weird, it's not being sadistic, it's just like, I feel like you gotta earn it. You gotta
Yeah.
earn the kill, and I just think archery is just the way to get a little more intimate with you and your target. It's a lot more of a
Mhm.
close range thing. There's a lot more things that have to go right to make it all work
Mhm.
out.
Yep.
So I just feel like archery just kind of enhances my relationship with my quarry a little bit. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it. I can't explain it better than that, but hopefully people know what I mean. It's like,
Yeah.
if you
I
shoot a
I
de-
get it.
yeah, you shoot a deer with a bow, it's probably 25 yards and in. You've probably observed that animal before if it's a buck you've been trying to get, or you've
Yeah.
observed them close up and how they interact with
Right.
each other.
Right.
And I don't know, I just think it puts you in closer range, but it's still a very effective way to get it done. But
Yeah.
I guess that's just it. It's just a little more intimate, and I feel like with archery as well, it's something that you really should be practicing throughout the year. So we
Yep.
may have this 3-month season, whatever it ends up being, but to really be proficient in what you should do for the animal, again, that's what we taught the kids, is you should always be ready to go. So it's one of those
Yep.
things that even though you're only in the stand so many times a year, it's a year-long, lifelong process.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I agree, man. That's a really good perspective. And you're someone that has when you kind of went from the shop to your new job, it wasn't it's not super easy for you to always find the time to go. And one thing that you've mentioned is that you kind of look for what fits into the season of your life that you're
yep,
in. And even though there's been times where it's been hard for you to get out for time wise or whatever, you still make some priority for it. And it's even that, like, I hate to say it this way, but even though it might be a fight to keep that in your life, you've always done something to make sure it sticks around in some
yeah,
capacity,
you have to.
and that's something that I admire about you. Um, but I think you kind of touched on a little bit. One of the biggest things that you've spent time in the outdoors doing is fly fishing, and you're like uber passionate about it. And I've been trying to get a lot of fly fishing guests on the show, and
Yeah.
they all got tight lips. I'm like, I don't know. I think you can just come on and talk about some
Uh,
slinging some bugs. But um, this episode of In Camp Podcast is brought to you by Bird Dog Custom Woodwork. Premium materials made from wood with a whole lot of care and patience from my buddy Steve Notebart and his business partner. Check them out on Instagram at Bird Dog Custom Woodwork. They make some awesome things for your home that will turn into heirlooms one day. And they're doing some pretty cool stuff in the hunting space as far as making tail fan plaques, but anything you can really think of, cutting boards, tables, cabinets, all the things. Check them out. Thanks a lot. What do you think is so unique about the fly fishing culture and the people that do it and the activity? Because you said that it was such a good thing for like you wrote a paper about it in college and how that it might be something really good for kids that are autistic. And I mean, I'm not calling you autistic here, Tom, but like what's been good for it in your life?
um, there again, I think it's kinda like the point I made with archery and the deer, being a little more intimate with your quarry. I think
Yeah.
when you're using light tackle and flies and things like that with that style of fishing, I think you have to, and this is just my experience, someone could tell me I'm wrong. I hope I don't insult a bunch of conventional tackle/spin slash spin fishermen here, whatever, but you're it when I had that, and I'll still grab the open face reel every now and again, me and the kid will go kinda have some fun, but it just, you're slinging a rooster tail across the run and just kinda drifting it across the run. Something's probably gonna hit it. Like, you're not gonna get skunked if there's trout in the water. Same thing with bait. Like, of course, they're gonna come up and eat bait. They can smell the worm juice in the water. Like, they know.
Yeah.
Um, but when I got interested in fly fishing, I was actually a teenager, and my dad was, obviously, we big fisherman, and he's like, "I don't have the time or patience to figure that out. I can't teach that to you." So it wasn't until sometime in my 20s that I actually decided to go for it. Um, but I think, to me, it's like you have to read the water and the conditions a little bit
Hmm.
better, trying to get them, and it can be very effective, don't get me wrong, like, um, to present something to that fish that looks like it's natural food in a way that looks natural. Like,
Hmm.
it's not easy, but once you figure it out and once you figure out how to read the water, it can be very effective. And
Hmm.
the biggest difference between the 2, just so people kinda have some context if they don't know, again, a worm with a sinker or a rooster tail getting flung out from a spin reel, the weight of that bait or lure is actually what takes it out.
Hmm.
Fly fishing, what's on the end of that line 80% of the time is something very small and light, and therefore it's
Hmm.
the weight and the taper of the line that
Hmm.
gets the fly out. So there's
Hmm.
also a technical difference to how it's done, and I feel like there's kind of a beauty and an art in the casting. Instead of just like a
Yeah.
flick of the wrist, you really do have to kinda, focus on the mechanics of your body and how to do it, and when it all comes together, it's just there again, it's all part of the process. Whether you caught 20 fish that day or 2, it's how you picked the water apart. In your mind, you gridded it out. It's like, I'm gonna get 10 perfect drifts in this quadrant, and then I'm gonna cast a
Yeah.
little further and repeat. And then I'm gonna move upstream or downstream, whichever direction I wanna work in, and you're actually picking the water apart. But there's
Yeah.
also a lot of body mechanics too that go into it. So, I don't know. To me, it just clicked, but the biggest part is when I got into tying my own flies.
Yeah.
I was always into art as well growing up, so to me, that's
Hmm.
I can't make as much time to draw or paint like I used to, but tying flies gives me a creative outlet,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so there's that whole component of it too, which could be its own podcast episode.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yep.
Uh, my problem with the body mechanics in casting is I end up looping my tip when I think I got it, I loop my tippet in about 20 circles and then I gotta tie a new one on. But
Yep. It's
I think,
timing.
oh yeah, it definitely is.
Yep.
And I always find like for me being not really like I always dabble. Like I'll go out a couple times in the spring for trout or whatever. I'm actually thinking about doing a little bluegill fishing here with the fly rod because they're up
Hey,
right now and in
that's
three
an
feet of water.
absolute riot. I love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think I'm going to do that. But I think one thing that's helped me when I'm remembering how to cast or trying to get better at casting is having an open space to fish. Like
Mm.
picking apart a mountain stream when you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like the best place to learn when you got laurels all over
Right.
and you know what I mean? It's a lot, it's pretty difficult that way. Even though everybody in PA is pretty sold on those like 4-inch little brook trout and they're the prettiest little fish ever, but you know what I'm
I
saying?
know. I know. I have I want people to truly respect when they land one of those little wild brookies in a mountain stream. Like I really want them to respect it. And
Yeah,
this is where fly fishermen get themselves into trouble because I'm going to say like I wish I saw people handle fish a little better, especially
yeah,
wild ones that are really struggling just to be there and exist and reproduce the way they do against all odds.
yeah,
Um, it's like I know it's fun the blue line and people do love those little brookies and but there's a spot that I hike back to on the AT and we'll catch 'em. Um,
hmm,
but I have seen in the last 10 years where I was catching 8 inchers. Now it's
yeah,
all the 4 or 5 inchers.
yeah.
And
They
I go
are,
back there and I see evidence that people were back there, and it's like, it kinda breaks
yeah,
my heart.
yeah. They are such beautiful fish.
Mhm.
J and they're not even really a trout. I guess they're a char, right? They're not, like, in
What
the
they call
trout
them up
family.
north, yeah. Yeah, char.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are such a cool fish, and
Mhm.
they are pretty unique because 'cause they're, like you can find them in just about every mountain stream, you
Yep.
know? But they aren't 8 inchers. They're tiny, most of the time. Not that you
And
can't find them, but
well, also what makes them special is the fact that they're the only fish that's actually native to Pennsylvania. And what
right,
they need to survive is pristine conditions, which is why you only find them in certain
in
places.
mountain stream. Yeah,
And
yeah,
and so there again, like to me, like we've been out hiking and I'll spot one in a pool that looked like a drainage or something, but I mean it's pretty, but it's not big.
yeah,
It's like the size of the dining room table I'm sitting at, and there's one or two in there that are just the colors are amazing. You can pick them out as
yeah,
clear as day. And the
yeah,
fact that they're there is just it's an awesome thing. And I
yeah.
know that there are some that get stocked, and if you ever looked at a stocked brookie versus the wild one,
They're not the same.
they're not the
Yeah,
same.
they're not the
So,
same. Uh, one thing that you mentioned is about about reading the water when you're fly fishing, and I think that's something that's if you're fishing on a lake and um, you don't know what the structure is or what the bottom contour is, or there's not really a lot of stuff to look at on the shore to cast at as a target. you kind of just can get into an area where I think there might be fish and start fan casting.
Huh?
And not that you can't do that with fly fishing, but it wouldn't be the most effective technique. It's really effective to learn how to read those intricate pieces of the water. Like you talked about a run or like maybe a little bit of current or an eddy going behind a rock or things like that. I think that's really important to relating to your archery skills as well as somebody like if you're trying to go in the woods and look
Mhm.
for a place to kill a deer, you're trying to make that deer. I mean, most whitetail guys are shooting out to 30 yards,
Yep.
30 some so maybe some guys are out to 40, which we're not going to have a debate about how far is too far. But the point of bow hunting isn't to try to shoot a deer at 40 yards. The point of archery is to get the deer as close as possible and shoot it.
Yeah.
And and you even break that down further when you're a recurve hunter and
Uh-huh.
you're like, my max shot is 15 yards, and
Uh,
that's might be a far shot for people that are, you know, so you're just like in fly fishing. Um, you're trying to look for those small little pieces
mhm.
where whatever deer you're hunting, whether it be I need to put some does in the freezer, whatever, you're trying to get them to really step within, somewhere in that 10 to 15, a 15-yard shot is a wheelhouse for everybody.
Yep.
Everybody who shoots a bow at a deer, especially if it's a compound bow, that's a really good place for you to be. If you're with a gun, you don't care about 15 yards.
No.
But when you're with a bow, you're like, this is this is exactly where this is the tree that I need to set up in to
Yeah.
shoot. That deer's going to stand right there. And you need to have that
100%.
confidence. What has fly fishing really taught you about those intricacies and trying to find them better or training your eyes to find those little things that you might not notice if you were fishing with an open face reel and fan casting just the big area?
Yeah. Um, I think it goes back to something that we learned that we discussed earlier was patience.
Hmm.
When I finally, when I check off the box, I today I've been a good dad, I've been a good husband, been a good employee, and I get to go be a good Tom. And I'm gonna go
Hmm.
fishing. And you get
Yeah.
down to the water and you're just so ramped up, you're like, yes, yes, I'm here. You just wanna you just wanna charge in and start casting right away. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's where patience has to kick in. Some people say go flip rocks. It's like, we'll talk about that in a minute. But ultimately, it pays to sit there a minute very
Yeah.
quietly from the far bank and just watch. And, so many people know about, runs, riffles, pools. Okay, that's the structure of most creeks. Like you
Yeah.
said, let's look for some eddies. But let's also kind of see if we could recognize maybe there is a deeper, slower spot. You can kind of tell the water just does something just a little bit different there. And if it's a
Yeah.
certain time of year, like the winter, some of the best fly fishing I've done is actually in the winter. But you
Mm.
got to go slow and low. Like find where it's easier for them to be to get some calories, but they're not spending too many calories to actually be in that spot. So you'll see those little differences in the water. And I have been fishing with people who say there's no fish rising. And it's like, no, if you really watch for like 10 minutes, you're going to see
Yeah.
something because there's always
Right.
bugs in the water. So they're always
Yeah.
eating, you
Yeah.
know. So I think it comes back to the patience thing. Now, ultimately, if you are going to spend any real amount of time on the water, you can just work water all day. You're going to
Yeah.
try a bunch of different things in a bunch of different places. But
Yeah.
I think I will tie a fly onto my rod just so I have something to hook on an eyelet as I walk down from the truck. But chances are, based on what I see, I might switch it up.
Yeah.
And you have to be confident to go in there and just be like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to catch these fish. And if I end up having to put a nymph on or a streamer on, even though there's dry fly activity happening, like I will do whatever it takes you know, but notice the difference. Don't be afraid to change up your rig. Once you're in a
Mhm.
tree stand, you're in a tree stand, and most people don't want to move from that stand. Even if you're in a climber and you're like, geez, I should really be 40 yards that way with this wind, we're so hesitant to change. With
Yeah.
fishing, you can always be in attack mode. You could always be on the offensive. And,
Mhm.
if you see the water, if you see a certain characteristic of the water and you're like, okay, I think this will work, but I think I'm not getting deep enough. Well, then bring that line back in, tie an extra length of, you know, tippet on and put a little more weight on until you're bumping bottom and then drift it
Yeah.
through the run and see what happens. But
Yeah.
I think it all goes back to patience. I mean, read the water, take a minute, actually see what's going on.
Yeah.
And the whole flipping rocks thing to kind of see what the activity is in the water, I appreciate that. But here's one of the dirty little secrets a lot of fly fishermen probably won't tell you. If you tie something that looks like a bug and you put it in front of their face, they're gonna whack at it
Yeah.
because they live to survive. Every minute of every day, they're burning calories just to not get washed away. They don't really sleep. They're always there. So
Right.
they have to eat. So imagine yourself in survival mode. You're hungry. You need to eat. You really like the cheese crackers, but someone offers you a peanut butter cracker instead. Are you going to turn it down?
Right.
No. So
Yeah.
maybe whatever is hatching. But again, if I give them something that just looks like food, 9 times out of 10, I think they're not as smart as we give them credit for, but they're not stupid either. Like they'll eat.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think so? You said that some of your best fly fishing has happened in the winter. What
Mhm.
about what about the seasonal positioning of trout? Are you like, is there like something that you're doing a lot more at this time of the year versus other times of the year?
Um, that wild trout and stock trout are very different, and a lot of my
Yeah.
winter fishing success has been on our local creek here, which actually does get stocked pretty heavily in the spring. So they are
Yeah.
holdovers. So it's not I think the biggest thing you need to do in the winter in that case, it's just diligence. It's just kinda
Sure.
slowing things down and really being willing to be patient with your presentation. Just obviously, it's a lot subsurface, nothing's really on the surface at that time of year, maybe some midges. You might get some midges in a winter day,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, we're fishing, down deep, and the water's not moving that fast.
Yeah.
So they're gonna get a better look at what's coming at them. So that means you gotta size down with your tippet, size down with your fly, so just
Mm-hmm.
something that's coming at them that has the profile of a food source they're used to.
Yeah.
That's really just kind of what works that time of year. It's not I don't know that they I mean, obviously, the water can come down a little bit that time of year, so if you know where some of the deeper spots are, you do wanna go there because that's where they'll literally hole up in the bottom where it's moving a little slower and it's easier for them. So,
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of where the fish might be, if you are familiar with that water, try to find the deeper spots, but
Yeah.
otherwise, I just think that time of year, you gotta be bonking them on the nose with it, but you can catch them.
Yeah. One thing that you just mentioned is, well, you've mentioned it a couple times, maybe changing your tippet or lengthening your tippet, or that's we have this is the same way for deer hunting. We have so much resource available now
Mhm.
where you can really accelerate your learning curve. What is a way that people could find resources? Because I don't. My dad told me, "Oh, you got to put your tippet up." I'm like, "What the? I'm not ice fishing. What do I need a tip up for?" He's like, "Not a tip up, a tippet." So where can people find a good resource for learning? Because there's a lot of terminology with fly fishing, and there's different intricacies than, like, oh, I'm going to throw a quarter ounce uh, cone weight on here or
Yeah.
whatever, that like pretty basic stuff to talk about. But what are some good resources that people could use to learn all that terminology, or even what they should be using in a certain body of water or species or whatever it happens to be?
So I okay, so we'll discuss this assuming the person doesn't have a mentor.
Sure.
There's no one in your circle that can teach you all this stuff, and I have been the mentor to a few people, and I
Hmm.
think that's fun. I think if they're open to learning, then I'm open to teaching.
Yeah.
Um, there's obviously a ton of material on YouTube.
Yep.
The problem with things like YouTube and Instagram is there's a lot of people out there who want to position themselves as experts who might know a lot, but I don't know that again, are they the right person to teach you? Is their way the right way? So I
Hmm.
think if you can, a fly shop would be a good place to start. I mean, we
Yeah.
have we have one right here in our own backyard, and
Yep.
go in and just ask questions. Like,
Yep.
so when I first decided to learn, like I actually did spend a day with a guide and they just
Mm.
took me from said, look, here's what you need for our day of learning. Get
Hmm.
this, get that, get this. I'll take it from there. So
Yeah.
that's a good opportunity too. But I think just kind of going in there and just try not to go down too many rabbit holes, keep it simple. Um, I actually I'll give props to another podcast that sometimes I check in on. It's oh my God, it's Ventures Fly Company. I forget the name
Mm,
of the podcast, but these guys, their whole shtick and their whole shtick of their YouTube channel is fly fishing for everyone, right? We're gonna take
mm-hmm.
you, and they've got this little university that they guide you through. I don't know if they charge for it or not, but there's a series of videos that just kind of take you step one, step two, step three. This is what this rod and reel does. This is what the line does. This is what the leader does. This is what your tippet does, and this is how you want to kind of set up your rig. Um, there's a lot of different ways to learn, and we do live in a golden era of knowledge with things like YouTube and stuff like that. Obviously, there's probably some pretty good books out there. Um, I would caution people don't go too fast too soon. Like right
Mm,
now, something that's very popular is what's called the mono rig, right? People are
mm-hmm.
actually tight line nymphing without fly line. They're actually using monofilament as the entire length of their
Oh,
line or butt section.
yeah.
Um, don't like but you have to understand, like, most times it's not very easy then if you're on the water with that particular rig to kind of change things up if you want.
Right.
Whereas the regular fly line, you can kind of replicate that nymphing system with a longer leader setup,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So don't jump right into the mono rig if you don't understand everything else, because there's a lot of other options there. So I just think don't
Yeah.
go too far too fast with what you might see people doing online. Really just try to focus on the basic steps first.
Right.
Um, and people, but we're all in a hurry nowadays because we can be, but I would just caution
Right.
against being in a hurry.
Yeah. I agree with that. What do you think that new anglers overlook the most? Let's say they do have a mentor and they've started, they've gotten their feet wet, and like you said, don't go too fast too early. What is something that they might overlook if they do?
Hmm, that's a good one. Just even a seasoned angler will forget the basics
Hmm.
sometime.
Well,
Um,
and that's the same thing with deer hunting. Like you'll get into the woods to scout,
mhm,
and because something distracts you in the woods, maybe you see a big rub over there that might not mean anything to your whole game plan, and you
yeah,
kind of go down this rabbit hole, and then you're like, nothing I'm finding is really making sense, and it's because
yeah.
you weren't really trying to just think about the basics first, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. So I guess to answer the question, and because this would also apply to deer hunting too, is before your fly ever hits the water, let's approach the water the way I talked
Hmm.
about earlier. Let's really think about it. Fish will spook, especially pressured fish. Will hear someone walking into the water and like, hey, last time all that commotion happened, my buddy Bill got stung in the face and then didn't eat anything the whole rest of the day. You know,
Yeah.
so let's think about how we're approaching the water. If I just told someone at work the other day, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of luck involved in fishing, but the guys that have been doing it for a while create their own luck. I think the same is said
Mm,
with hunting, right? How do you walk to your stand? Don't set a stand up that's in the middle of everything and you got to blow up half the woods just to get to it when you could have
yeah.
just fell back a little bit and they would have come to you eventually. I think fishing
Right.
is the same way. I think don't overlook the fact that if you're planning to be out on the water for a few hours, try to minimize your mistakes. Like walk in quiet, have the right kind of gear. I'm not a gear junkie, but have stuff that's
Yeah.
comfortable to wear, right?
Right.
Have stuff that's comfortable to have on your shoulders. If your pack digs into your shoulder and you hate it 30 minutes later, get a new pack, you know?
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
organized with how your pack is so that you can make those changes easily. I got to put new
Yeah.
leader on. Where's my leader? I'm digging through this monster pack. I got to go to the bank now. Take the pack off to find it. No, set yourself up to again to enjoy that time. Don't make
Hmm.
it so much about bringing one to the net. Make sure that you're able to enjoy it, and then I think success will come. So, I think that would be
Yeah.
my advice. Just think of the little things that kinda set the day up to be enjoyable, and you're gonna catch fish. You're gonna kill deer.
Yeah. I like that.
Nope.
What do you think separates? You said that fly fishermen, good ones, end up kind of making their own luck. So, what do you think separates like a really successful angler from one that's kind of just average?
I'll tell you, I'll tell you 30 years from now, because every time I go out of the water and I'm struggling, who shows up and just catches 3 fish and 3 casts 20 yards upstream of me is some old timer.
Yeah, yeah,
I swear to God, there's just some aged wisdom there.
yeah,
I think that's a big part of it. I think so. So there again, that's time on the water. Um, I don't get out as often as I'd like, and that goes back to the
yeah,
season of life I'm in, and I embrace that because what that means is when I am out, I enjoy it all that much more. But
yeah,
I just think time on the water um, means a lot. It is one of those things that reps are definitely going to count. I think also treating yourself to different water. Take that day off of work, drive 2 hours, and spend a day somewhere
mm,
else where the fish are totally different. The atmosphere and the biomass is totally different. So I
right.
think time on the water and various different locations, but also, and this is going to sound cheesy, if you have a memory like mine, which isn't all that great, take notes. Write
Hmm.
write things down like, "Hey, I was out Little J. It was October 17th. It did get up to 75 that day. This is the hatch that was coming off, but this is how I was finally able to hook one and bring it to the net on this particular pattern this size." Sounds like you're getting lost in the details, but if you pay attention to your historical data, eventually it's going to come through for you. And yeah, you're learning. You're learning
Yeah,
something that you didn't notice before that made it work. And maybe you found it through trial and error, but there's a reason it worked. Try to
yeah,
piece the puzzle together. Um,
yeah.
that's hunting as well. I mean, we have all these cell cam, trail cam pictures. That's all just historical data. We're trying to predict where we should be based on what we
Hmm.
have seen happen in the past. So
Right.
pay attention, get the reps in, go places.
Yeah. What about you talked about flipping rocks and kind of learning what bugs are in the area, and that maybe it doesn't matter quite as much in certain scenarios. Do you think that it's always when you're picking a fly out of your box, is it more important to match like the profile of what is around, or is it versus like matching the exact hatch that's going on in that area?
Understand what phase of the hatch you're in, because just because you see above the surface activity does not mean they're going to bite on that. Those bugs may have just come off last night and the
Mm,
fish haven't quite figured out yet. Hey, I can eat that. I mean, even
right.
hatchery fish, they look up, the 10 months of the first 10 months of their life, they're used to looking up and seeing food come down. So eventually they figure out that stuff coming from the top, I should also try to eat. Um,
Right.
but try to understand what phase of the hatch you're in, because even though there might be activity above the surface, you still might only want to fish like an emerger pattern, right? Something that's
Mm,
still under the water that they're trying to get to, before it actually escapes from them.
right.
So in terms of what I look to do is, yeah, I try to obviously be aware of what's crawling on the rocks and what might be coming off, and I'll
Hmm.
match it, and maybe that's my top fly, but I'll probably always just put a dropper on that's a nymph. Why a nymph? Because these bugs are nymphs for 3 years of their life. They're crawling around
Right.
those rocks for 2, 3 years before they become that winged insect for a couple weeks. So the nymph
Yeah.
is always there. So
Right.
I've caught a lot of fish on nymphs. And when
Yeah.
I'm tying nymphs, like I like to get creative and I just like to make things that just look buggy.
Yeah.
And there are recipes and there are fly fishermen that'll tell you, no, 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 you got to use this exact size hook and these are your dimensions with these exact materials. That's a rabbit hole. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's not true, but again, the dirty little secret is you make something that looks like a bug, they'll eat it. What you really need to be careful of is making sure you're using the right materials for their functionality. Like, don't use a hackle feather that's stiff when you really
Okay.
need a hackle feather that's flowy and soft.
Yeah.
You don't want something that's really going to get in the way of the hook gap and the hook point, because they could hit
Yeah.
it all day long. But if their mouth like bumps it out of the way because you used an oversized hackle,
Yeah.
so yeah, I will match the hatch, but more often than not, like you always see some of the streamers I tie up. Like, they
Yeah.
don't look like anything in particular. They're just big,
Yep.
nasty, and you give them life, and some big brownie's gonna wanna whack it, and they do.
Yeah,
So
that's
yes,
cool.
definitely match the hatch because that is what's going on in their world, but also don't be afraid just to make a practical decision of what looks like food.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Um, is there something in your box that you can't fish without, that you can't go without, I guess, not fish without, but go without?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say your pheasant tail nymph and your hare's ear nymph.
Okay.
So hare's ear, literally the tuft of fur that gets cut out of a rabbit's hair.
Mhm.
Those are the two that I always have with me. And, there's actually a streamer pattern called a slump buster, but those two nymphs for me are the slump buster. When nothing else is working, I'm going to go and I'm going to drop that nymph on there and I'm going to bottom bounce it and we're going to catch some fish. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, the nymph, like I said, the nymphs are always there.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
you could tie like a San Juan worm, something that looks like a worm, a woolly bugger, which is your streamer
Yeah.
pattern, because a woolly bugger on a dead drift can kind of look like a leech or um, Helgermite, just kind of lost. But it can
Sure.
also, if you strip it right, it could look like if you strip it through a slow pool, it could look like a crayfish.
Right. Right.
Fast water, you can
Yeah.
make it look like a bait fish. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about, I know kind of like some of the water that you're fishing. Do you find that you have to adjust because of pressure pretty often for the trout you're fishing there? Yeah.
Yep.
What do you think is something that you do to do that adjustment?
So I'm going to, if it's a high pressure water, I know that I'm not the only one looking at hatch charts. And that's
Yeah.
when my mind kind of goes like, of course you want to try what's supposed to work this time of year, but I'm not going to beat it to death all day. If I'm not getting
Yeah.
hits on that nymph that looks like that particular mayfly that's coming off the water right now, I'm just going to go to something. I'm famous for saying, show them something they haven't seen.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking at that hatch chart. Everyone's dialing down to that exact size that fly shop says should probably work this time of year. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying fly shops are motivated solely by profit, but they probably are making money selling those flies. I'm going to
Sure.
show that fish something they haven't seen.
Yeah.
And just any sort of stimulator pattern, just again, they're like, oh, that's new. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't go for a ride last time I bid
Yeah.
on something that looked like that. So
Right. Right.
that's when I like to get real creative and just change things up. And that's why you look at my fly box and there's just a bunch of stuff tied and you're like, "Tom, what is that?" I don't know. Like, I don't know if
Yeah.
it's a particular bug. What's it called? I don't know. I just made it up, but it works.
uh, have you tried any lanternfly patterns yet?
Lanternfly patterns. I've
Do
seen
people
them.
have any luck with them?
I would imagine they must.
They got to start eating them at some point.
Yeah, well,
They're
they
everywhere.
figured out the cicadas, like, I didn't do the cicada thing either, everyone was going nuts about these cicadas, and I
Yeah.
never fished that either, um, so I did not dabble in the lanternfly thing yet, but I figured, yeah, sooner or later, these things get blown into the water, and these things are probably eating them.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Over your years, and like we've talked about it a couple times, you said it's, maybe the season of life that you're going through. I kind of want to touch on that a little bit. Or with deer hunting, and I mean, you're always kind of doing some kind of adventuring, whether it's you're out with the 22 or you're with your son or your daughter and you're doing all the different kind of stuff. What do you think is the kind of ever roving or evolving definition of success for you?
So, that has changed over the years, and I think I learned my own lesson when I would advise people who were getting into the outdoor stuff, just you have to enjoy being outdoors to do it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
it's funny, I listened to a podcast the other day that was saying how your 40s is like the most difficult time in your life because obviously there's a bell curve, but if you're in the hump of the bell curve, which most of us are, our kids are very demanding, their schedules are very demanding, our employers are demanding of us with the responsibility they put on us. Oh, and by the way, best case scenario, physically we're at a plateau and we're going to
Yeah.
start to go down. So we're just tired and exhausted. So I have then kind of tempered my expectations in terms of how often I could get out. So
Yeah.
And I definitely still text the text group with my buddies, and I get a little cranky sometime if I sat for hours and didn't see a deer because you get that dad, you just kind of backslide into that dad mentality of, oh, should have cleaned the garage, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But to me, success is it's just being there and doing it. And I take great pride in the fact that though it has kind of slipped a little bit with how busy we get with things right now, that I'm still doing it. And I know that 8, 10 years from now, when we are kind of empty nesters, there's still going to be deer to kill, hopefully, and fish to catch, right? So
Mhm.
now it's like, just go out, do this for yourself, be where you want to be. Like, I am a nature boy. Like, I want to be outside, I want to be on the water.
Mhm.
And also take the opportunities. Don't make it just hunting and fishing. Like, go on, grab your kid, go on an overnight hike.
Mhm.
There's so many places you could park on the AT, and even within 4 or 5 miles, find a nice little campsite,
Yeah.
just get outside. So my definition of success, it's not so much about how many fish, how many deer, whatever. It really comes down to you shot all year to give yourself this opportunity. You're still plugged in, you're still practicing. You sit
Mhm.
every morning, have a cup of coffee, and tie 2 flies before you have to go to work so that your
Yeah.
fly box is full when you finally go out. You're not just making it about fish to the net or deer in the freezer. Find a way to
Mhm.
make it about that whole big process where you really get to enjoy it all. And again, it comes down to just enjoying being out there. So I've tempered expectations with body counts or fish counts to the net. And sounds cliche, but it really is like I got out. I was where I wanted to be. I was fishing the way
Yeah.
I wanted to fish.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for that. And maybe I get to do it with a friend too. And that's, oh my God. You actually get out there with a buddy, like 2 people's schedules lined up to make this happen. Like, that's a win all day long.
Yeah.
So that's to me, it's successful just doing it. And again, some people are going to say that's cliche. And I know some of your guests that I've heard find a way to really do it all. I
Mhm.
do what I can, and I'm happy with the effort that I give. And I'm also happy again that I do it knowing that I've checked off all the other boxes in life in terms of being a dad and a husband and an employee to
Mhm.
provide the opportunity. So it's just a win all around when you get out there and accomplish anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man, and it's like it is that season of life. I've had guests on here that get to try a little bit of everything,
Mhm.
and, um, it's the season of life that they've either been able to be in or got to be it is it is just that way, like,
Yeah.
um,
It's
and
not always,
I
yeah,
get
it's
to
not always about coming back with a full stringer. It used to be.
yeah. Yeah,
Before I
yeah,
had our first child, it's like if I went out and came back with any less than 4 or 5 fish, like, you know,
yeah. No good.
no good. Now it's like
Yeah,
I will be sitting there tying my wading boots, tying up the laces, and I just feel like the other day, like Friday, I went right from work. All my stuff was in the truck, and I went right to the tully from work.
yeah,
And I'm sitting there
yeah,
tying up my boots, and I'm just like, "This is good. Life is good." Like,
yeah,
right now, the creek is there,
yeah,
I'm here, life is good.
yeah. Yeah, we sometimes have to live vicariously from the people that get to try a little bit of everything, and that's something I love about getting to have these conversations is
Mm,
if I don't get to go out west and hunt something, I can hear a story about it or whatever it is, and I don't that's another thing is I never wanna miss out on getting to swap stories with buddies and
yep.
I mean, you and I have kept contact for a long time because of that
Mhm,
that first initial interaction we got to have in that bow shop. And you know, most of the time our conversation ends up happening in the fall and over the hunting season, but we always have some kind of contact and like, hey, how's it going? What are you up to in the woods? And um I think that's cool because then we get to swap stories together
yep.
and tell each other about the successes and the failures and uh
That's what's cool. It
there's
is a
been
communal thing. Even if you don't get to do stuff together, it brings us all together in some way,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
and like you said, some of your guests I've listened to, and it's like, "Hey, someone's out there doing it." Like, that's awesome. Like, that will be me. It used to be me. It'll be me again, and
yeah,
but right now
exactly.
I'm enjoying everything. Like, someone hit me up at the club the other day, and I was talking about an all-day tournament we had to be at or something, and Like, "Oh, I can't believe you have to do that." It's like, I don't have to do it. Like, I get to do it. I get to watch my
Right.
daughter swim. I get to watch my son on the lacrosse pitch. Like, I get to do that because that window doesn't last forever. And like I
No, it
said, I
goes
mean,
fast, man.
just keep just keep the hammer down, get out as often as you can to keep the passion alive and not to forget everything you learned. And when you come out on the other side, you'll be in a different season of life. And I have friends who are there, 15
Mhm.
years older than me, their kids are all grown. Now it's like now their kids are adult. So hunting is taking on a whole new thing. They're like really
Yeah.
like they're not the mentee anymore. And maybe there's grandchildren involved now with some of my buddies. And that's like a whole other season of life where they get to enjoy it from that perspective. It's like
Right.
be where you're at, keep the hammer down, don't stop going out, don't make the excuse, and you will look back at the end as a long life of good memories out there. You will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Agreed. Agreed. Dude, this has been a fantastic episode. I loved this conversation. I think people are really gonna relate to the things that you brought to the table. So thank you so much for coming on.
absolutely, man. I
Uh
love talking about this stuff.
yeah. Where can people find you at?
I mean, I do have an Instagram account. It's Bugslinger80. I think that's what I called it. There's probably an underscore in there
Yeah.
because the first one got hacked or something. But if you want to post it up, it really is just, I don't post often, but when I do post, it is typically hunting, fishing stuff, maybe my little guy shooting his bow and stuff like that. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just like to let people kind of see, oh, hey, Ham caught a steelhead, awesome.
Yeah.
So
Where you can really find them is all those local clubs. So find your local one, even if it's not one that Tom belongs to, and join it and make a difference in your own little community.
I would definitely recommend that. Don't just pay dues, show up to work detail, use the range, get to know some people. Yep.
Cool. Dude, thanks again so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, man. Thank you. It was a blast.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's a wrap, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to Tom and I chat it up on fly fishing and archery today. If you would check out Tom and the link in the show notes, he's kind of an elusive fella. So every now and then he puts up a good post, and I think you'll enjoy what he has to say. His content is always pretty cool, and his thoughts are always very insightful. If you would, I would so greatly appreciate a 5-star rating. And if you have time, write a little review for me. I'd really appreciate it. It means a lot. It helps the show reach more ears, and I can't say thank you enough for doing it. So thank you. This is In Camp Podcast.